Hello, friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement. I'm joined with my co-host, Dennis Yates. How's it going, Dennis?
Wonderful. And tonight, I couldn't be more happy to have this interview start with a brother that I served in the year of 2022 with on the team of Bradley S. Billings. And we got to know each other then. And then currently we serve together as grand representatives for various areas of grand jurisdictions of Mexico. I now know him as Gregory, Wright, and one of my favorite people in Freemasonry, and just so happy that he's here. Greg, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Buenos dias, hermano.
Yes.
Muy bien. No, thank you for having me. It's good to be on. It's nice to have this opportunity to visit with you guys. I like your show, and it's cool to be on it. So thanks for inviting me. And to follow up with what you said, yeah, it's been really cool getting that experience of being a grand representative in Mexico. It's presented a lot of really unique opportunities, and man, I couldn't be more proud to be a part of that and to help create a bridge between countries and various jurisdictions to bring different types of brothers together and different ideas together and different ways to overcome challenges.
Well, I've heard from Dennis that Mexican Freemasonry is very interesting in a good way. So that must be really exciting to get to be a representative and participate in some of that.
That's putting it mildly. There are a lot of differences, very unique differences. They have a completely different style of masonry than in a lot of aspects. And then there's a lot of similarities as well. But I find the Mexican brothers to be very warm and welcoming, to be good men. But yeah, they do things different. We certainly don't do our degrees the way they do them right there. And if you've ever sat through one, man, it is.
Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Masonic background?
Yeah, so I started in masonry. I mean, really, I feel like I'm kind of young in masonry. I was initiated a little over 10, this is my 10th year in masonry now. I made a pretty quick run through it. I was excited, ambitious, studied quickly, and I was initiated in May, passed in around June or July, and then raised in August. So it was a pretty quick run through the 3 degrees in terms of timeline. But I was very proficient and got through it and just loved the experience. I was really fired up to be a part of it. I don't do anything halfway. I'm not a fence rider. I'm either all in or I'm all out. Mm-hmm. And when I decided to get involved in masonry, I've been all in, and I've been tearing up the Masonic pavement, hitting the road ever since. 10 years of being highly active. My lodge was struggling at first. When I was initiated, one of the things that I probably could have gone through the degrees faster than those few months, but it was difficult to get enough people in lodge to open up a degree and have a degree. We had a difficult time getting enough guys to open up an EA lodge to begin with. That was something that was a challenge that our lodge had, and with some other really good brothers that were in my lodge, we teamed up together and we worked on building value of our lodge and getting it to increase. Within just a few years, we were at the point we were bringing in 17, 18 new EAs a year, and they were all getting raised and they were all sticking around. So that was very exciting. We were growing quick. We were doing lots of fun activities. I went through the chairs, served as worshipful master for the lodge, now a past master. From there, I got involved with the MWSA for the 64th Masonic District, which is Tarrant County, North Texas. Mm-hmm. Went through the line there, treasurer, secretary, vice president, and president. That was a really unique experience. From there, I was appointed to be a district deputy grand master for the Masonic District number 64A in 2020. And that was quite an interesting year as well. But I hit the ground running on that one. I got all my visitations done before the shutdown. So I was really essentially done with my year before May. Like, I got approval from the Grand Master at the time to not wait till when they wanted you to start. I'm like, hey, Grand Lodge is over. Can I get rolling? And Grand Master was very gracious and said, man, knock yourself out. Get work done. So I did. I took advantage of it. I hit the ground running, got my visitations done, and then the shutdown happened. That was wow. That was quite a year. One of the best experiences, if I could just go on, if I could touch on that real quick,
Sure.
one of the neatest experiences I had as a district deputy grandmaster was the service awards. I felt like it needed to be special, and boy, was it. Um, I came in to my first one to be a part of, as DDGM, to be a part of a service award. And I spent days preparing for it, trying to memorize the script on what to say, having several different types of scripts, and kind of then just creating a hybrid of my own. And then I had this idea of, hey, I want to do another script for the wives and do something, a special presentation for them, because this is like an opportunity to celebrate them as well. Because the wives are the big background. When you know this, you guys are both married. We can't do any of this without them. They're the foundation that we're able to build this house on. And without it, we can't do this. We don't have their support if they're not behind us all the way. And and they go a lot of nights without us. And so having their support is big, and then having their help is even bigger. So this was a great opportunity, I felt, to celebrate the wives. So I got to my first one and gave the presentation, and then before I handed them the service pin, I brought up the wife, and I'm like, now I want to talk about you. And I gave a presentation. I handed her the service pin, and I invited her to pin her husband on behalf of the Grand Lodge of Texas. And
Nice.
the room was packed. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Everybody had goosebumps. It was beautiful. And wow, what an opportunity that was to show some love to our whole Masonic family that's involved with this man right here. Both him, his wife, his family, his grandkids, everybody that was there. They all got to be a part of it, and everybody had their chests were beaming with pride. And wow, what an experience that was. And that was my favorite part about being a district deputy grandmaster, was the opportunity to bring some celebration to the extended Masonic brothers family, which is a part of our Masonic family. Well, that's what we are as a family here. So it was really special to do that. So that was great. Now to move along, we go into 2022. I got to be on Brother Billings, right? Whatever. Brad Billings. Sorry, the titles. Sometimes I still just go like, oh, the titles.
He'll take it however you give it. It's okay.
So Brad asked me to be a part of his team, and he asked me to be a part of the planning. So I got to be a part of the planning team, and then he asked me to be the grand photographer. We were looking to do something a little bit different than just taking pictures. We were looking to actually like create this team that captured the year and really solidified the history of it. We were looking to create some videos, to create some different presentations, to get more exposure, and to just add more to the schedule of responsibilities for the role of the grand photographer and their team. And that was pretty neat. We had a really good team of guys all over the state, like 18 of us in all. And we all took, great pride in getting out to all the events and taking pictures, but also capturing videos, putting together presentation stuff, and really just solidifying the history and documenting the history of the year. And I was really proud of that. And I was proud to work with those guys that were a part of that team. They were all there on their own volunteer time and dollar. And I couldn't have been more excited to work with them and proud of what we accomplished that year. It was a very exciting year in Masonry. It was tangible. You could feel it across the state. And going to all of these events and capturing it, man, it still gives me goosebumps to think about all of the things that we were involved in that year and how excited everybody felt. Every lodge, every event, the families being involved. I mean, just seeing all the kids running around everywhere we went. I mean, it was truly special, and it's really made me proud to be a Mason, to be a part of such a great group of guys.
Completely understand. I completely agree. I feel the same way, and there's just a certain weight that carries when you say you're a team of 2022, and it's not one of negativity. It's always one of that was a year of awe and wonder. So we all put together as much as we could. We gave everything that we had. We left nothing to doubt, and left it all on the field, and we ended up having this great year that could not have happened if we hadn't all been as invested as we were. And, I think that speaks volumes. I hadn't seen it since. I really hadn't seen it before. And so I can't wait to see it again because I know it's coming. I know that it will happen again. But but that year was a special year. So Greg, I with all of that information and how you've hit the ground running, golly, what even made you decide to join the fraternity?
There were a couple of things that led up to it. There was a moment that was really a climactic moment that threw me over the edge, but I got to go back to when I was growing up. My teenage years, the formidable years of going into manhood. I had my grandfather was really my role model. My father wasn't involved with my life after about 12 years old, but my grandfather, and he was an exceptional human being. My grandfather was, a war hero. He was an officer, an aviator, a meteorologist. The Bronze Star, the Silver Star was in World War II, was in Korea, had a successful year after the military as well. And he was just a man's man, a leader of men, and one of the greatest human beings I've ever known in my life. My grandfather was like everything that I aspired that I wanted to be. And, while I could never reach the goals of accomplishments that he did. I mean, overcoming the Great Depression, going through world wars, and raising a family of 6 and overcoming all of these adversities, going to the Korean War, then coming back, raising a family, starting, leading a battalion of aviators in the military, eventually retiring. I mean, the list goes on and on. He was an exceptional person, and legacy was strong. And while I couldn't I couldn't achieve the level of his success, he was where I set the bar in life. It's like, I want to strive to be like this man right here. And one of the things that my grandfather and I learned that he was as a teenager was a Mason. I saw his, hey, what's that ring? What does that symbol on there say? And he would, we'd tell him, all those are square and compasses. Hey, what does that G stand for? Oh, let me tell you about that. Who are these guys that are knocking on your door? Oh, they're Masons that are coming by to give me a service award for being a 40, 50-year Mason or whatever. There's just all these different things I'm asking him about, and he's telling me about. I'm like, wow, that's Freemasonry. That's fascinating. What do you do in there? Like, what's that about? And so I learned a bit of it from him. And when I'm like, well, how do you become one? And he was like, to be one, ask one. I'm like, well, what is that? What? I'm 16 years old. I don't know what that means. And he goes, if you want to be one, you need to ask one. You need to ask a Mason how you become one. Well, how do I become a Mason? And he goes, you just did it. And then day I turned 18, he handed me a petition and said, here you go, fill this out. And I started to fill it out, and I started talking to him more about it, and I'm 18. I had no level of maturity that was ready to get involved in Masonry. I was too busy trying to be a teenager and be a goofball, Looking back at it, I was looking to do everything but responsible things. And so I wasn't ready at the time, but I sat in the back of my head and I thought about it, and I was like, wow, one day I'm going to really, all right, let me get out of college. Let me get into my career. Let me get to those different levels of having some accomplishment already underneath my belt before I joined. I wanted to accomplish more and be more successful in my life before I joined a group of what I had learned to be the cream of the crop of our society. It's like, okay, I got to hit some bigger levels before I joined. So delays went on, and it was quite a few years that went by. And it wasn't until roughly 10 years ago, a fraternity brother of mine from college was ranting and raving crazy conspiracy theories and, talking about Lucifer and the devil worshiping and the Illuminati and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Oh, this YouTube clip video. And so I go watching it. Some crazy YouTube conspiracy theorist guy just telling all these nutty stories. And I call him back and I'm like, man, this is garbage. What do you do? Listen, you really need to, you should knock this off. You look dumber than a box of rocks posting this stuff online and talking about it. And he was insistent on it. Like, this is real. They are trying to take over the world. They are worshiping the devil. And I said, okay, hold on. I tell you what, I challenge you to an educated conversation about it. Let's both go do our homework. How much time do you need? 30, 60, 90 days. You take your pick. Let's do our homework. Let's bring a bibliography back of actual fact resources. No YouTube conspiracy theorists qualify as legitimate source. Okay. I need legitimate sources, and let's come back and let's have a conversation about it. But really, to be honest with you, you're talking bad about my grandfather at that point. So I'm taking this a little bit personal. My grandfather is a great man, and by no means would he ever be involved in something like that. And so I'm calling you on it. So I get online, I start to look at a few things, and I quickly was noticing that, yeah, okay, so most of this is BS, right? Okay, I found a few things that started talking about, what was going on in degrees and what the secrets were. And finally, I just shut it down. I said, okay, you know what? This is enough. They probably don't want me to know what this is. Most of this stuff is garbage. I just need to go sit down with some brothers and have real Masons and just have a conversation with them, try to learn some information that I could take back and debate with this guy. Crazy, right? So I did. I went and visited a local lodge. And after visiting with these guys a few times, I went back again and again and started learning more about what they're doing and who they are, and more about what Masons are involved in and what their beliefs are. And I got to this point, I like you guys. I mean, why am I not? There's no reason I should not be a part of this. I need to be a part of this. And so, dude, I got to join, man. You guys got to get me a petition, man. Come on, man. I don't want to just learn about it. I got to be in now. And so, they gave me a petition, and it took a little bit of a minute, but I got one and went through, all the degrees, and then went back to my buddy and, had this follow-up conversation with him, and it started with, listen, you trust me, right? Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you, right? You know that I'm going to trust my integrity, right? Yeah. Okay, all that stuff you're saying is BS. there's no conspiracy. None of that stuff is true. All it is it's just, it's really a little bit better than our fraternity we were in college. Instead of talking about being greater men, we're actually trying this over in Masonry. And by the way, I since joined, and he was just blown away by it and apologized and knocked off all that. But that's just weird that little catalyst there that got me to join was rather kind of crazy. It was a crazy conspiracy theorist that pushed me over the edge to get me to join.
That's real dedication to your research there.
You guys were, I was surrounded by people that I just wanted to be around all the time. So I wasn't leaving at that point. It's like, okay, I got to be a part of it. But really, ultimately, for me, why did I join? It was my grandfather. It was his legacy, and I wanted to be a part of that. It was the history of Masonry, the founding fathers, the founding of our government, our democracy, how our congressional legislative system works, the role of Masonry being involved in so many great and laudable things throughout history. And that was just, and then of course, it's a blanket weave together with the values of good men wanting to be better men, wanting to surround themselves with better men, wanting to improve their communities, wanting to be charitable. Just all of these values we all had were similar. It was something that was very enticing to me. And I just knew that I had to be a part of that.
So once you joined, how did the expectations that you had in your mind compare with the reality once you got in?
Well, first of all, we didn't appear to be ruling the world behind closed doors, and that was highly disappointing. The secrets were overhyped too.
Yeah.
None of that was going on, so that was a little bit different from expectations. But what was really something that a serious answer to you, I was expecting more excitement. I was expecting more engagement and meetings with more energy and with more substance. And as we all know, meetings can be boring and not have a lot of substance. There can be a lot of contention at times in some people's meetings. It kind of depends on which group, but I was expecting a lot more excitement. And while I find some things that are exciting, and a lot of brothers do as well, I was expecting a lot more of that on the grand scheme of things. And I was expecting a little bit more prestigiousness going on than like it was when my grandfather was a Mason. The way he explained things was the way things were when he was active. And Masonry obviously went through changes and a lot different than, in some ways, than when he was. So we're really the biggest differences in with my original expectations before I walked in.
Understood.
Very interesting. I'm kind of interested to know, in looking back and then currently looking at it, what do you believe the strengths and weaknesses of our fraternity are in your mind?
Well, let me start with how I like to frame things. I like to frame things in categories of strengths or challenges and opportunities.
Okay.
So when I see weaknesses, I like to look at those as opportunities for improvement, and not just in a dialectical way to sound PC, but if you've got something weak there, if you're, let's say, training on your body and you've got, arms that are weak, you get in there and you work to improve, and those are opportunities to get stronger somehow, or by focusing on some weaknesses. And that's how I look at things. So let me start with that on how I'd like to frame things, so I can make at least a little bit of sense on where my brain is going with all this. But in terms of strengths versus weaknesses, let me start with strengths. We all want to hear the good news first so we can relish in it, right? At least I do. Tell me the good news first. I think first would be fellowship. Where do Masons meet?
Oh, you're asking?
Yeah, where do Masons meet?
Well, they can meet anywhere, really, but typically at lodge.
Well,
on
on the level.
Okay.
Yeah, Masons meet on what?
I was
Deeper
trying
than
to
you?
I was trying to give the kid a chance, right? I was ready to go, and I just held my tongue.
It's like, man, we can meet anywhere. What are you talking about? No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not at the Thai restaurant.
But Masons meet on the level. The CEO of a company and a janitor of that company can be a member of that lodge. And when they walk in the door and sit down to fellowship with each other, they're on the level. They're the same. Their status in this world is exactly the same. A prince and a pauper. There's no difference. None of that. We meet on the level and can fellowship, friendships, learn from each other, grow from each other, and do so on equal ground. And everything else is checked at the door. Different religions check at the door, different political backgrounds check at the door. Your professional titles, successes, failures check at the door. We're all the same when we walk in, and we can sit down and have this fellowship. You can't find that anywhere else in the world. There's no other organization that presents that opportunity. And that's a really big strength, I think. That's probably one of the neatest things, the most unique things about Masonry is the fellowship. I mean, we're a fraternity. We are not a lot of other things, but we are a fraternity. And that meet upon the level thing is one of the beautiful symbols of Masonry that we do really well, that brings value that nobody else can touch. Next, I would say education. We spend a lot of brothers are interested in learning, expanding their knowledge, expanding their brain, and there's a lot of opportunities without Masonry. Lectures, speaking opportunities, study, etc. Lots of opportunities to improve your brain power. And I want to give you another one right here, the proficiency. I've seen a new brother join, and when he got initiated, man, he had a stuttering problem that was pretty. No, I mean, it was a serious stuttering problem. By the time he was done with his 3 degrees, this guy could stand up and give lines in front of an audience and do so freely without stuttering. And that just blew me away when I saw that. Like, wow, what a big difference. But it's that firing of the neurons, getting the brain stuff going. It's like playing chess. Proficiency is a lot like that. It increases your IQ. It increases those brain waves. Get those things firing off. I've seen 100-year-old brother that was sharp as a tack, because this guy would sit there and practice his proficiency night and night. In fact, Brother Sam Levacy, I was proud to be a part of his installation as a worshipful master at the ripe young age of 100 years old. Centurion.
Gosh.
This guy was amazing, and he knew every line, every degree, every opening, closing, every lecture, everything. This guy was brilliant. And it was just firing it off. I mean, just firing off those things kept his brain moving really strong. So it's tangible. We do educate, we do increase brain power. You put in your effort, and you can walk in on equal ground and come out better for that. Another thing that I would like to say that I think is strength is going to be, the experience you get in Masonry. There's a lot of opportunities to administrate, team build, leadership, working with others that you don't get outside of Masonry. And I'll give you an example. On the job or even military, you get into a leadership role, you have subordinates that are underneath you. You have a string attached to those subordinates to get them to follow an instruction, right? If you're on the job, you've got a paycheck that's attached to that string. If you don't do what I need you to do or follow an instruction, hey, you can lose that paycheck. That string pulls that back, and that motivates you to get that job done. If you're in the military, same thing. You may not have that same string, but you can certainly get demoted. You can certainly end up with some PT, end up in a real jam that is uncomfortable from not following instruction. So those kind of learning opportunities are different than in Masonry, because how do you give an instruction as a person in a leadership position to other people without a string attached and get them to do it? How do you do that? It's different. You don't have a check. You don't have a string over there that you can attach and pull back if it's not followed, right? So you've got to find a different way to get somebody to do things within the lodge. And what I found in my experience in lodge leadership, what worked best was inspiring others to do something. And the role of a worshipful master in a lodge, if you can become proficient, and you've got that opportunity from your year in the East to build that proficiency in motivating others. But if you can learn to inspire people to do something, man, that's a skill set you can't find anywhere. You can't get that in the military. You can't get that on a job. And that separates you from your peer in the professional world. I took that back to my job and changed the way I was working with others through inspiring that I learned within lodge leadership. And man, I was separated from the herd very quickly, and it just shot my career in a better direction. So I think there's a lot of really neat strengths that build us as men, build us to be stronger, to be more intelligent, to speak better, to give better presentations, to study better, to manage better, and to work well with others better that we don't get anywhere else. So Masonry brings some real values there that I see are extremely valuable, that will always be there as long as we continue to present that for brethren to have. Now, there's some weaknesses to that too when it comes to some of these educational things. I think one thing to me that really sticks out that I've noticed is mentoring. I think that we have a lot of opportunity for improvement in the world of mentoring. While I was talking about the proficiency part, because it's tongue to ear, it's not written. It's a moment to mentor. It's a moment to build a relationship. It's a moment to build your brain power. It's a moment to improve, right? I need a drink there, talking too much. But there's a lot more opportunity for that. There's a lot of brethren in our fraternity that are very skilled, a lot of senior aged men. We got 20-something-year-olds and 80-year-olds sitting in the same lodge room. And I'm seeing some missed opportunity to pin some of these guys together to learn from each other. And very particularly some of the younger guys getting the opportunity to learn from some older guys who've been there and have done that. And they've got a whole lifetime of experience behind them. And one of those things is through leadership, teaching some of those leadership skills to inexperienced leaders. I think that's a mark that we're missing in Masonry. I think that there's not enough continuity between the generations and moving leadership from one to the next and raising the next group and getting them ready for a leadership role. I'm seeing that lacking a lot. I've got an example for that too, that shows where I've seen that to be a problem. I used to work for a company, and when they brought me in to be a part of a mentoring program, they were going through this situation to where they had a lot of senior guys that were getting ready to retire, but they failed to bring in a new group of guys to train them up and get them ready to fill those roles when they retired. Suddenly, these guys are all at retirement age. They don't have anybody there. It almost bankrupted the company because you couldn't just put these people through training in a week or two or a month or two. This is something you get in. You do a couple of years, a lot of training, a couple of years worth of an apprenticeship mentoring program before you're really ready to step into that executive role. And I was one of the first hires that they'd had in decades. And they were bringing in guys like me to get in and quickly get moved up and get trained up and mentored up and be ready to fill those retired spots within a few years. And it was real close. That company almost went bankrupt. Fortunately, it worked though. We were able to get enough guys in. There was a lot of fast tracking that went on, and instead of taking 4 or 5 years, within a couple of years, I moved up and was able to be proficient enough to that the other guy felt comfortable. Okay, this guy's got it. Now I can retire. And that happened in a lot of situations with different others, with different leaders in the company, and they were able to salvage it, and we're okay financially, and everything worked out. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that almost bankrupted that company, and I see that being very similar in Masonry. There's a lack of mentoring the next round of leaders, and instead kind of holding on to those leadership roles and not stepping back and then working with somebody else to get them training. And I just think, and while I'm not saying that's the rule, I'm just saying I'm seeing a lot of that, and that's just my humble opinion, which may be different from others. But I've got an eye for this now from seeing it professionally, and I'm looking across the craft and I'm seeing it pretty commonly. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunity there to start getting some new leaders ready. We got a lot of highly skilled individuals in this fraternity, and a lot of guys that are ready to hit the pavement and ready to hit there and really put some good work in and get some things accomplished. And I feel like I'm one of them. I'm one of these guys that brings a skill set to the table, and I want to contribute, and I want to be a part of things, and I want to help accomplish goals and make some things happen.
I can appreciate what you're saying with that wholeheartedly. And, a lot of people don't realize it, but even, beyond just the day-to-day business of it and going financially bankrupt, if you've got a publicly traded company and you're showing lack of transition to the next generation, you're showing lack of vision. And so you lose your support from the financial sector as well. And so, you've lost that, you lose that stability. So what you're saying is exponentially important. And I think that when you consider where we are today in Freemasonry and the way the dynamics of the lodge cultures and also the size of the lodges are changing, we really need some continuity and some transitional work put in to be able to show stability for the long term. And I think that you're spot on the money on why that is, and that's a lack of mentorship. People are afraid to let somebody else take over their job because then they might feel worthless at that point. But if they continue to be a mentor in that mentorship role, then they'll never lose a job because we've always got brothers coming in that could use that mentorship.
Yeah, and I think we missed the mark there on some value opportunities as well. That's one of the things that's valuable about our fraternity that brings us a lot of relevancy in the world and in our competition with other organizations. Another weakness I see is focusing on membership numbers. It seems like for decades now, it goes back to long before I joined Masonry, but I'm seeing some of the transcripts and conversations that were going on decades ago, and they were complaining about membership numbers dwindling. And there's been a lot of focus on that. I've been a part of experiencing multiple Grand Masters come through, and that being the focus of their year is focusing on membership. And it didn't change. There was no actual tangible accomplishment from that, but it was definitely something that was their only agenda, or their main agenda at least, was membership increasing. And, I'm not sure that that's something that's important. I know that other organizations out there face that same challenge. They have the same complaint. Name your organization out there that's been around for 100 years, and every one of those guys are going to complain about membership numbers being dwindling, and they feel like they're dying. I just don't buy that. I hear these conversations of we're dying, and I'm just like, man, you might be dying, but I don't think the rest of us, we're not dying. I mean, I'm going to be here for a long time, and I've got a son coming right behind me who's going to fill my seat when I'm done. Yeah. So we're not going anywhere. We're not broke. We're not dying. I just think that's rather toxic, and that doesn't bring us value. I think there's other ways that we remain relevant and we remain thriving throughout the next, 100, 200, 500, 20,000 years. I think there's opportunity to stay there and be relevant in society. And I think it starts with our membership.
Yeah.
It starts with bringing value. And again, these are just my humble opinions, but it just feels like that's what would excite me to stay. And I'm looking at it from a pragmatic, realistic point of view. And to me, that's just what's glaring. Focusing on our members, bringing value, making this worthwhile. Who wants to come sit through a boring meeting when you could be doing 500 other things? Who wants to argue about something meaningless that does not get accomplished and something petty? And instead of be with your kids or be with friends or go to a ball game or whatever else, there's just too many other things to do to feel like we're wasting our time. So we got to make sure the brothers aren't wasting their time being here, and they have some value that they take away with every encounter.
To comment quickly to your point, when you focus on, this applies to lodges too. When you focus on membership, it becomes like a bait and switch, because you promise all these things and then they come in, but you're already looking at your next potential candidate or trying to get more. However, and I think you're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. When you focus instead on providing value and getting the brothers excited to be Masons, and you're providing activities and content that people are excited to participate with. If you're providing value, then the members will come. They'll see that the people in the community, their family members, their friends, they'll see that they're excited to come to lodge. I think a great example of that was Billings year. I'll just spell it out. Everyone was excited, and I'm sure Brother Haston would correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe petitions were up that year. It was a good year to be a Mason, and it's because we weren't focusing on numbers. What was not a focus. It was not an issue. It was about providing value, having a great Masonic year, and I think that was all the proof we needed. That if you just focus on actually providing Freemasonry to your lodge or your Grand Lodge or whatever you want to apply that to, the members will come and they'll stick around because they're seeing that the people that are already members are getting value, and then they're coming in and they're getting it too.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And, I just from experience alone, that 2022 year, I'm just throwing online, just kind of for memory's sake, keeping a record of what we're doing on my own Facebook page. And I've got a list of good friends, good men that I know really well that are following me and going, man, you look like you're doing something great. I want to be a part of that. How can I join Masonry? Mm-hmm. And I got really excited. I'm like, man, there's a lot of my buddies that they need to be Masons. I mean, every one of these guys is stand up and would we would be so much better off with some guys like this in our group. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then the next year turned into contention and turmoil and division. And man, I had to pull back. I suddenly became very reluctant to want to get petitions to my buddies. I'm like, man, no way I want those guys to come in here and see this going on. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a part of this. I'm having a hard time justifying sticking around myself. So no way I'm going to bring in some guys to do that, to be a part of that. But that luckily that all got resolved, and things are looking up now, and I'm back to talking to these other guys about joining. But yeah, absolutely. You're doing value. You're doing stuff that's exciting. You're doing something that makes guys proud to be there, want to be there, inspired to be there, and leave with value, feeling great from it. It's palpable, and that spreads, and good men know other good men. That's the very best recruiting tool I think we have.
Absolutely.
That in the National Treasure movie.
Yes, which is out again, and it's either Netflix or Prime Video. It's out again, so we have that extra plug this year.
Oh, it's a garbage plug. I think we need a better one. We need Ridley Scott to produce a movie about George Washington and sprinkle in real Masonry in there. Him doing a cornerstone ceremony of the White House, or going to a lodge meeting as president. Something. We that bring a lot of people. Good.
There you go.
Let's put our money together. Let's get a movie. You guys want to write a script? Who's got a pen and paper? Let's go.
We'll slip in symbolism and include lots of explosions, so it appeals to everybody.
Yeah,
I want Benjamin Franklin. That's the role I want. If I'm going to be a part of this, I want Benjamin Franklin.
We'll put them all.
Because I want to go back
to be historically accurate, but there's just all.
I want to bring France back to America to help fight and gain our freedom. I
You just
definitely
want to
want to
grow
be
your
there.
hair out and wear knickers. Come on.
Yes, yes.
Washington riding a bear with a machine gun in each hand.
I want to be in all the clubs he was in.
All right, back on track. Talking about the course of Freemasonry and looking at kind of where we're at now. Where do you see us going in the next 10 or 20, 30 years? What's Freemasonry going to look like here in Texas?
I think that depends on, how do we step up to the challenges and opportunities for improvement, and how do we adapt to the challenges that we face as a fraternity in our current society? What value do we bring to the table? But having said that, though, I think that we have the tools necessary. We have great men in our craft who have a high skill set, who are ready to jump into roles. And I think we have a lot of, the majority of us are serious about masonry, and excited about it. And we have enough people that are fired up about this that can bring some value and increase the value and adapt. Uh, Now, change. We're an ancient fraternity. I don't know how much change is necessary, but we certainly need to adapt to some things here and there. Uh, you know, the grand photographer no longer needed to paint it on an easel what was going on, and they had to change and start taking these photographs, which were a big change. Computers created a need for change how records are being kept. So there's things that cause a need to adapt as time goes on, and we just need to do a reasonable and honest job of adapting to some of these changes. Lodges, I think, need to act more like businesses and make good financial business decisions and strategies based on that. So, how do we adapt to that? There's a lot of ways to do it, but we can always help each other grow as men, iron sharpen iron, and grow to be the best version of ourselves. And if we can focus on that, I think this is a great opportunity and I think that doing that, we're going to be strong in 10, 20, 30 years. Because I see guys like Dennis and Justin, I see guys like us mentoring the young fellas 30 years from now and sharpening their iron, sharpening our iron. If that's still going on in 30 years from now, and we're still a part of this game, and we're still relevant, and we're still doing things in our community, we're still making men better. We're doing what Masons do. And I see this going on for a long time. I just don't see us going away. It certainly could go away. We could be in a real bad spot, but we've got too many smart guys that are ready to get to work. And that's going to be what gets us through all of the challenges throughout the next 30 years.
Well, and the reality is, you've done it earlier with yourself, and you said, I'm going to be here and my son's going to follow. Well, the reality is that maybe at an organizational standpoint, there's our infrastructure shrinks and get right sized, but I'm going to be here, and I know that you're going to be, and I know that there's a few other brothers that are going to be here. And so Freemasonry won't ever go away. We make right size for the time and reshuffle and start taking advantage of the opportunities we have with technology and things of that nature, and streamline some processes. And then, maybe we can pull through this stronger, just like the smartphone. We no longer use cameras. We use smartphones now. And so, maybe we can shuffle our business practices and acumen and there and be just fine. I think we'll be just fine.
I agree. We're going to be just fine. I think as long as we can avoid the toxicity that we saw very recently, and if we can stay away from how U.S. politics seems to be going, that how toxic it is. If we can stay away from all that and do things the way Masons do them, we're going to be just fine. I mean, this is going to be around forever. I like to talk to my friends about Masonry and compare how we do elections compared to how they do it now. And then back at history, and well, this is how they were doing it, when George Washington was president. And, then it became, more and more outside of lodge, became more of a public thing. And then it started becoming mudslinging and looking, now here we are. I mean, it got up real bad all the way up until Civil War. And then, it kind of calmed down. And then it started getting more and more toxic. And then now look at what we got. What a hot mess the
Yeah.
election was leading up to that. And what a hot mess it's going to be for the next 4 years until the next election, too. If we can keep that garbage out of Masonry, that would be great. In fact, I would even go so far to say is if we could teach American politics how to do things the Masonic way, I think America would be unstoppable. It would be so much
Yes.
more palatable. I think the leaders that would come out of the woodwork and want to be a part of it would be the very best in society. I mean, the kind of person that wants to be a president now is just the type of person that can get through the vitriol, and that's not going to bring the kind of people we really desperately need to lead. That brings just the person that's toxic and can handle the toxicity, and it's not. I just imagine the kind of quality men who are high level leaders that would step into the role of a president if open politics was run the way Masonic politics are, that shake each other's hands, that say, you know what, I respect my opponent right here, but let me show you what I do differently. And it's up to you. And you guys decide what you want, but you can't go wrong either way. I mean, imagine if they did that,
Right. I
how
agree.
different our culture would be. So I think we've got a lot to offer, a lot to offer the world. We got a lot to offer each other. I'm extremely proud to be a part of this, and it's not going anywhere. I don't know. I might. If this thing gets too toxic, I'm out. I got better stuff to do.
Hopefully we won't see
Well, I
that
don't,
again for a long time.
yeah,
Hope
I
not.
don't, I think that was, there's always going to be a little bit of distaste when the big change and have you from, one year to the next. But, I don't think that we're going to witness the same type of distaste that we had last year. That's for sure.
Well, change is psychologically a very difficult thing to go through. There's a lot of study on that, especially in the professional world. The hardest thing for employees to do is go through changes.
Hmm.
Businesses constantly have to change, and that's a big challenge for organizations is to adapt to change and to get people to adapt to change. As you've got to be flexible and bob and weave to the challenges in the marketplace. And we do too as Masons. We've got to adapt to changes and bob and weave with society in order to get in the game, stand a fight. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're touching on what my next question was going to be already, which is knowing the that we have ahead of us. How would you tackle them to make them a positive outcome instead of a negative outcome? So I'm trying to word it differently than I normally would. Normally, I'd say, knowing the weaknesses, what would you do to correct those weaknesses going forward? So let's say, what are we going to do to take those challenges and make them the most positive possible?
So, challenges and opportunities. How I like to frame this up. We've got some challenges and we have some opportunities for improvement. So I think that increasing the value, working on that mentorship, really building up stronger men, building those leadership skills within the organization, building that knowledge base is first big step. And that's just my opinion. I think we really got an opportunity right now to make things a lot more exciting with our fraternity, and that goes with that ironing, sharpening, and that self improvement thing. Every almost a man that becomes a Mason, that's one of the traits he has. His interest is for self improvement. We all have that similar trait. So I think focusing on the self improvement is the best way we could adapt to challenges. That increases our value. It only makes us stronger, and that increases demand to be a part of this, and that in stronger candidates. That brings in more people that want to be that are valuable and are charitable, have the means to help pay for things, have the skill set to come in and bring some value to the table, and have a want and a need to fellowship and to become better men. These opportunities, I think, are really, and these are opportunities for, I think, some of the most impactful accomplishments of challenges that we have.
So, Greg, in this discussion tonight, we've gone through all types of things Freemason, but I happen to know that you are a board member of a group, New Horizons, that's near and dear to your heart, and that you have personally benefited from. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that and how you became a board member and what that's brought to you in your life, because that's a really cool thing to be a part of, in my opinion. I know what it is, and I think it's an awesome thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it goes back a long time ago. I was first introduced to New Horizons when I was a kid, and I lived there when I was 12 and 13. Taken out of a family situation and placed into a children's home. And, there's lots of stories that you could go into with that. I mean, it's been, almost 40 years ago for me now, but almost a lifetime ago. But the impact that had at the time, I wouldn't say traumatic, but it was intense. An environment like that, going from a family home to a children's home, and needing the help of people you didn't know. It was a really challenging situation. There were a lot of kids in there, that all came from either CPS, pulled from their families, or they didn't have any. They were in the foster care system, the orphanage system. And so there were a lot of stories. There were a lot of kids that were heavily impacted by their situation. And I got to know some of those kids when I was there, and I made some friends. There were some really good human beings in those people that were there, and the people that were helping that organization were fantastic. The founder of it was an amazing guy. I've known him up until the day. I mean, he just died here recently, so I've known him for a long time. But I kept going back as after I left and visiting friends, visiting staff that I knew, mentoring the kids. And, I left with that place with some things that were pretty heavy on my conscience, that, I was going to have a hard work ethic, that I was going to be the kind of father that was going to be there for his kids. And, parenting to me, like, took a bigger priority from that moment. It was more important to me than ever and superseded everything else. And, and I wanted to be a good husband and keep a family together and not have my kids go into a situation where they may end up in a place that's outside of the home. It's just, and those things happen. And I wanted to help the kids that were going through there, because they had so many challenges, and so many of them fell through cracks. I followed some into their adulthood, and, a lot of them, they just had bad situations. The cards they were dealt, they didn't have enough help. And it was just a shame. It weighed on my heart that there are people out there that just need a little help, just a little lift up, and give them some guidance, put them on the right path, and encourage them along the way. And people are really resilient. So there was a lot of those kids that went through there. They went through some real tough challenges, and just like life, the challenges make the tougher the person. You don't light weights to get stronger. And the same goes for life. Those hard challenges really give you the grit. And, some of those kids that came out of there, man, they had some real grit, and they just needed to be reminded of that. So I enjoyed going back and talking to them and letting them know, hey, man, you've got some strength that none of the other kids have when you get out of here. And you've got a chance to do something that you control in your life. And what do you want to do? Make choices. So anyway, that I really enjoyed being a part of that. I got into fundraising as I got a little older. After I got out of college and got into my career, I was invited to be a board member. And the experiences of fundraising, of marketing, the organization, of being on the board were really rewarding in the end. I mean, it gave me a lot of perspective and experience. So I'm proud to have had that opportunity, and I'm proud of the work that I was able to help with the organization and what we were able to do as a team over there on the board. I serve with a great board now. We bring in a ton of money, but we spend a ton of money too. These kids aren't cheap.
That's a fact.
So there's a lot of challenges. There's legal challenges, but most importantly, there's kids that have some real challenges. And man, the stories of them are just there. Some of them are really hard to hear. The worst you can think of comes through there. When you see almost every girl that walks through the door of that place has been sexually abused. I mean, that brings some real tangible light to how dark the world is out there, and how kids, just a percentage of the overall kids, are in a system like that. That number within that percentage is a huge number. And, they need good men and women helping. And, that's one of the things that drew me to Masonry is, the like-mindedness of other Masons that want to make the world a better place and that want to make themselves better and improve themselves constantly as an ethos, not as I need to get my stuff together, but I'm always looking to improve. And I found a home in Masonry from my convictions, match so many others. And it's pretty special.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry. It's something, that when you asked me that, I wasn't quite sure how to take that because it's not something that I really talk about. And I know it's something that just came up here. I brought it up in the forum because I thought it had a little bit of relevance, the experience I had to the board because it's got a perspective from a couple of different angles that I bring to that table, and board member and also a former kid that benefited from that organization. So it's very relevant for my involvement with New Horizons. I've got a unique perspective that nobody else on the board has. And when we were at the forum recently for the candidates in the Grand Lodge, I had mentioned it just because there's some relevancy there. The relevancy of my experience with that is relevant to the home and school board, even though it's not an active organization like a brick and mortar. It's still in that widows and orphans category, and that's something that's relevant to me. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I brought it up, but it's not something I really talk about with my brothers. Some of my closest lodge brothers like texted me going, "What, man, I had no idea." Well, I mean, it is what it is. I don't talk about all of my life experiences typically. I don't even talk about what I had for dinner last night, but it was a great experience. Let me tell you.
Well, fun fact. I too had an experience that was very similar. And, there were challenges in my life, so I get it. And I ended up living in a place that helped challenge young men get their stuff together. And here I am. I push the boundaries a little bit, of course, because I'm just a rebel in nature. But, that true grit, there's something to be said about that. And I think that that's helped me to persevere and be successful in business and in masonry, well, in life, because we all have plenty of challenges in life, and we can either, succumb to them or we can just overcome. And I think that what you've gone through is an amazing story that, people should hear about, because it is real, it is relevant, and there are a lot of good people that come from those circumstances.
Wow, I didn't really know that about you. That's wow. Now you make some sense to me.
Right.
Well, it's true. Hey, the greatest generation was our grandparents, right?
Right.
And why were they the greatest generation? Well, because they did great things, and
because they didn't have things, and they had to make things. They had to create. I think
it goes back to the strength. That grit was strong. They overcame some of the world's greatest challenges. World War, the Great Depression. A lot of people didn't make it through that. And so the ones that did, well, they were tougher than nails by the time, they got to the 50s. They'd already, and then the Korean War. I mean, and then more, the market, the politics. I mean, all of the craziness that was going on, that was some real tough stuff to live through, and a lot did not make it. And the ones that did, they were stronger for it. And that's my point is, you don't get stronger from lifting light weights. You lift, and the same thing goes for life. Getting by with no challenges puts you in a tough position to not have the grit to handle challenging situations. And, and I think that has to do with fatherhood too. One of the things as a father, there's a correlation. You're a father. So a correlation there to me is one of the things that we do as fathers is, mothers, they comfort and fathers. Well, we throw tough stuff at them. We've got to get them. We got to toss stuff at them to get them ready to handle whatever life throws at them. I just let my oldest daughter moved off to college, and it was a conversation I had with her. This is a special moment for me, but my daughter, and was every bit of the typical teenage daughter, and the drive to go drop her off to school in college, when she turned to me and thanked me that I wasn't such a jerk that she thought I was, but I prepared her for what she's getting ready to do, and she recognized it, and it's like, oh, huge dad moment there.
Right.
And but it's true, that we prepare them. That's our job, is to get our kids ready to toss some situations at them and see how they handle it, and be right there to kind of guide them along the way, but to get them ready. And challenges are great. Tough challenges, I don't think anybody should shy away from. Those are that's the stuff to get you strong. And that's the stuff I get introduced kind of early. And I had a pretty interesting grandfather who was a Mason, the Colonel, and the Colonel was tough as nails, and he was pretty tough as nails on me too. But gosh darn, I loved it, and I looked up to him so much. He was the greatest man I think I've ever known. And the one of the big reason I joined Mason was to follow in his footsteps and be a part of his legacy. And here I am, still chugging along. Now I've got a young man coming up one day that's gonna follow in my footsteps, and daughters that are gonna raise young men or ladies.
Well, and
speaking of daughters, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at these girls like, listen, this whoever you marry, I mean, they're going to have to take an obligation to you and to me. We're going to do one in a lodge setting. So,
right. I didn't even have to say it. I already know that my daughter's going to marry a Mason. I mean, that's just plain and simple. It's just going to happen. And she likes the hotel life, so he'll be a traveling Mason. But, it's interesting.
Already know.
Yes. It's interesting that you talk about, throwing stuff at even your daughters. And we were talking just the other day about, driving. She's 9 years old, but I already told her, I said, look, before you get a car, you're going to have to be able to change the oil, change the plugs, change the tire. And her mom goes, well, I've got a phone service for that'll, I've got lockout service and all of that for her. She doesn't have to do that. I said, no, she has to do that for me, because my daughter is not going to depend on any man before she goes off and off into the world by herself. That's a fact. And my daughter's all excited. She can't wait to learn how to change a tire now. And of course, it'll be on my truck. She wants my truck. She doesn't want mom's car. She wants my truck.
Yeah, that's great. That's absolutely. You know what? I think we should have another podcast, just a whole series of podcasts, just on Masonic dads in general, just dads.
Right.
Podcast for all Masons to talk about dad stuff would be great.
That would be cool.
It would. I think that's the biggest. There's a correlation between what's going on in this world and that's all the craziness that's going on, and a lack of intentional fathers. You can run statistics all day long to support that, and I think that's where we have our biggest problem in the world, especially. I mean, really, America. It's a big American problem. We boys no longer have a rite of passage, and there is a crisis of a lack of intentional fathers. And there's a lot of kids running around in this world today that they don't know who they are. They got boys that don't know when they became a man yet, and if they ever did. And then you've got a series of confused kids, and they didn't have that dad there to fill that role to raise them. So they don't know how to handle things.
Man, you really would have enjoyed our conversations we had at Roy City a few months ago then, because that was a big theme we talked about.
Yeah, that's
true.
Intentional Masonry, right along with being an intentional dad, just being intentional people and living life with purpose and reason. That's extremely important. And it's something that Justin and I talk about all the time. And you're absolutely, that's hats off to you for recognizing that, because not everybody does. And another thing that you touched on, I don't want to get too far into it because it could be a whole nother podcast show on its own, because we talked about it before, but Justin and I have talked about it before. But, these young men that are coming to our doors now, you're absolutely right. They don't have that rite of passage. They don't have a full understanding of God in a religious sense. They feel like they want to be spiritual. They want to understand theology, but they're learning everything from the internet. So now our young members coming in, they're looking for guidance with some ancient traditional source, right? And they're looking for it from us. So if we're not intentional with what we're learning and what we're doing and saying and contributing back to the lodges, then we're missing the boat with these young men coming in.
The boat. This is a giant cruise ship. This is a great opportunity for Masonry to really change the world. I mean, we're filled with good, intentional men, some more than others, but that's the whole preface of our hallmark, right? And that's what the world is lacking. Well, how can we become better fathers, and how can we reach out and help some other kid out there and kind of put them under the wing and help them out too? I mean, hey, I know I got enough love to share, so I'm reaching out to other kids and offering help and guide and conversation and making sure they feel safe, and that helping these organizations out like New Horizons, that where I get the opportunity to talk to some of these kids. But if all of us could jump in and do something very similar, there's kids nearby, you've got a nephew or a niece or something like that, that Masons have a reputation of guys that kids could trust because they're good men that do the right thing. Stories of old relatives, you always hear some story of, I've got this old uncle. Was he a good dude? He was the greatest man I knew. And everyone, you hear that same story. Because it's something I always ask. Oh, my grandfather, my uncle was a Mason, and these are coming from non-Masons, so they don't know what else to say.
Yep.
But all I can say is, my response is, I bet he was a good person, and the response every time, best guy I ever knew. Right? I could trust him. He was always there for me. And wow, how much that's needed today. That's in our DNA, and I would love to get more conversations going on about that, because there's so much opportunity that we have as Masons to help mentor our community.
Yes.
On a person by person basis. 60,000 of us mentor somebody, that's 100,000, 120,000 opportunities right there for people to grow. And it doubles again. And it starts right here, and we all have that. And we put forth some of that effort with some of these people that need that mentoring. And I think we're going to make a big step in the right direction. There needs to at least be more conversation about that. Sorry to get on the pulpit of this, but I believe so passionately about it. This needs to be an important conversation that we're having more fathering, parenting, Masonry.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that seems to wrap this episode up. What final thoughts do you have, Greg? And then Justin will give his final thoughts on this show, and then I will wrap it up.
Final thoughts. Things are looking up. I've got a positive outlook for the next 30 years of Masonry. I think we're going in the right direction, and we've got some very talented Masons involved and active. And I think that only attracts more, and that gets us better as a managed organization. And sticking to our craft and sticking to what we hold so dear. So I think it's real positive. I hear negative stories, and it's just like, yeah, that's just toxic. I'm not buying that. I'm seeing a lot of positive trends going on that only look like they're going to continue. Not everybody's going to be happy, but that's human nature. Overall, we're going to be here for a long time. There's money in the bank. There's with some groups more than others.
Right.
And, for those that don't, they're clinging on barely and they're about to go bankrupt. I think those guys need to take hard internal decisions about thinking like a business and making good business strategic moves. Merging with another lodge, combining the assets is one great way to do that. I would suggest do that before going insolvent and having your charter pulled, and having all of the membership and whatever little assets you have left go to the Grand Lodge. You can merge two lodges that are struggling and can combine their membership, combine their assets, combine their resources, and both be stronger for it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that across the state. And I think that's needed. We're not in that golden age, a lodge on every corner. And some of those buildings, as great traditions that they still hold traditions when you merge. So those are some hard decisions that are going to have to be made by some. It'll be easy decisions for some others, but I think with good business, with continued keeping to the work, with guarding the West Gate, and bringing real value, making this something that we take
Yes.
something away from and we hold dear. Those are the key elements. I'm going to put value at the very top there. Really, pouring into the brains of our brethren and bringing some great value that we take away. Just so tickled to do it. That's why I do it. There's some bodies that I don't attend because I don't find value with it, and then there's areas where I do, like my Blue Lodge. I find a lot of value on it, and I'm constantly working with my lodge to increase the value. Let's keep this value high, to keep my attention. And for self-serving purposes, I want you to be very valuable because I'm going to get bored really quickly, and I'm going to have a hard time substantiating being here. So let's keep it up, and and that's a lot of other lodges do that too. We're all pretty similar. We're going to drift away and not be involved, and we're not going to be able to attract good men who would make great masons and be great additions to bring value to our craft. That we have to bring value to them. And with all of that said, I think things are looking up, and I love seeing podcasts come out, more discussions, more feeding, shedding that light, feeding the brain. Keep that up, man. Love that you guys do this.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that for sure.
You want me to go? My turn?
Well, yes.
Dennis,
You're the one that the whole reason I said let's wrap this up is because you look like you're fixing to fall asleep. So you probably need to go ahead and say something so you don't fall asleep.
Well, Greg, first of all, thank you for coming on to the show. It was a really great conversation. Two takeaways I want to kind of hit on. Granted, we talked about a lot of things, but you mentioned a golden age, and a lot of us look back. We look back at the time period where we were at an all-time high, and like you said, we had lodges on every corner, and by some metrics, that could definitely be considered a golden age. But I feel as though, and Dennis and I have talked about this, that we're looking at a renaissance right now in Freemasonry. It's not fully underway, but it's building momentum, and that will lead into what I believe will be another golden age in our fraternity. Will it look like it did in the 50s? No, I don't think so. Like you said, there's not going to be a lodge in every corner or anything like that. There may be less lodges. In fact, I know there'll be less lodges, but it's entirely different culture. The world's a different place than it was at that time, and I think we can't have the same metrics that and I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying that we will be a time very soon, in the next decade or 2 decades, maybe even 3 decades, that will be a period that will be looked back on in the far future as that was the golden age in Freemasonry. And I think we're on the cusp of that. You also mentioned the importance of really taking ownership, being a man, being a father, and guiding kids. Brought to mind a saying, and it's probably been beat to death, but I think it has relevance here. What is it? Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and hard times create strong men. It's our responsibility to, not saying that we're in weak times, but it's our responsibility to ensure that we're creating strong people, right? Either as parents or as mentors in the fraternity. We need to lift people up and help them be strong, to create good times for future generations, create good times for them because they're strong, but also that when they are involved in their communities and whatever organizations are important to them, in their family, in their job, that they are stepping up and elevating others and creating good times for other people.
Yeah, that I've heard of that saying too, and you're absolutely right. And in that area of easy times creating weak men, we're at that weak men phase right now. In the weak men creating hard times, we're going through that phase right now, somewhere right in there. This is these hard times. Hey, they get to build hard men again, and we should have our fingers in that. We should have our fingers constantly working on, so these times aren't so hard and these weak men aren't so weak if we contribute.
Absolutely. But that's all I have. Thank you again for coming on, man.
Justin, such a pleasure.
All right. Well, that was a great show.
Thanks,
See y'all.
Yeah,
Thanks, Josh.
you don't get away with that. So, in my mind, I think that the part of the beauty of Masonry is that it's not that we are hard on the membership of our fraternity, but we are challenging, and so we challenge each other to be better. We don't do it, yeah, a lot of us are not in the hard times that like I had, like you had when we were kids. We're living a pretty good life. I think I live a pretty dang good life, and I would never pretend to be the martyr, that for sure. I enjoy every day. I'm glad I'm alive. I'm ready to take on the next new venture. But Freemasonry, with that success, I can still go into the lodge and I get challenged in different ways that makes me better and stronger for that next opportunity, so that I'm ready to take on that next big venture that I'm planning. So I do see where it's that iron sharpens iron thing that we have, and I see where we are making stronger men. I don't think we're just making better men. I think we're making stronger men. And when I was younger, one of my influences as a young adult was Zig Ziglar, because I was a salesman. I was a salesman at heart from my very first kiss. I was a salesman, but exactly.
Look at that.
Yes, but and what you get with it in the long term. That was a vacuum salesman. But anyways, so I listened to a lot of Zig Ziglar, and one of the things that he would always say is, if we don't educate and lift up those around us, they're going to bring us down. If we don't lift up the majority through education and mentorship, then the majority is going to drag us down. And so I think we are in the next coming golden age, because we have the podcasts, we have websites, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, all these different avenues to reach people. And so, it becomes a lot of white noise. But, when you get down to the meat and potatoes of Freemasonry, it just always seems to push through all the white noise. And so I think that, coupled with the standing and wisdom of the ancients and the ancient mystery schools, and the understanding that we have to value each other and value each other's time. And so with all this melting pot of different ideas coming together, you're right. It's going to look different. The culture has changed. We have different tools in our tool belt, but it's going to be one of the strongest points in Freemasonry once we get right-sized. That's the thing, is just getting right-sized, so that there's not so many burdens on us back from achieving the greatness that we're meant to achieve. So I have loved this whole conversation tonight. I think that it's long overdue.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to know you, and I'm very happy to know that you're striving for such things in Masonry, that we've got leaders that are always pushing the envelope to challenge the craft to do better. And whether that's in the lodge setting, or whether it's in our philanthropic setting, or I know that was a big word, guys. I'm sorry. I don't even know if it was right. It was so big. But in that, yeah. Maybe if I say it with an English accent, it'll sound right. I don't. But anyways.
Of course, Dennis, that's the proper way to do it. As according of the United Grand Lodge of England.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny. So with all that being said, I think we are in a renaissance. I think that we're going to have our little schisms, because, even when you watch the stock market, it increases, and then it always takes a little dip, and then it'll start increasing again, and it'll take a little dip. And then, so, we're going to have our little dips, but we have to keep our eye on the prize and realize that our future is full of light.
Yeah, what's that? They interviewed a list of billionaires and asked them, what makes you successful? What's the key, or what do you suggest, or what do you recommend for the keys to success? And that's the ability to handle stress, and then to think long term, to get into your venture, and to give everything and not give up on it, even through the hard times. Keep
Yes.
rushing. So you're right; it goes down, but it's going to go back up, and you always stay on board with that. And I think that's good advice. Hey, they've had some success that substantiates it. So.
Yes. And if you notice, the billionaires of the world, they get together and talk and decide what's going to be the next big venture, right? How are we going to, not only how are we going to push this technology forward, but how are we going to give back to make everything that we're doing relevant? And I think our job as well, that, through all of our successes, we need to keep getting together like this, talking about our strengths and challenges, successes and challenges, and, words that you like to use, and
Challenges.
challenges and opportunities. I knew it was in there. It was a while ago, but I knew it was
real quickly. We've got the opportunities for some. We've got great improvement opportunities. In fact, they could be greater than right now.
I'd rather be unburdened about what has been. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
These challenges are like no other challenges, but our greatest opportunities ever.
All right.
Oh, man.
We do have challenges of that face a lot of different lodges in the Grand Lodge, but we've got a lot of opportunities to improve on those. And
Yes.
and
sometimes it just takes a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, a fresh set of eyes is good. We've got a lot of talented brothers in this craft, and I think there's a lot of opportunities that should be available to them to get in and get their hands dirty and get in and do some work and put their talents to it, and make some good things happen. There's a lot of that to do, and I'd like to be a part of that. So improve everything you touch, make it a better place when you leave, and that's what I believe.
Absolutely. With all that being said, brothers, thank you for coming. I love you both, and I'm glad you came. And keep it between the points.